Number one absolutely wasn't all about Duane. And I think something super interesting about the name, the Allman Brothers Band, is the intention was it was kind of the brothers being the band, not being Duane and Greg Allman. Let me back up a little bit. Duane Allman is a hotshot lead guitarist who records in Muscle Shoals, records with several people, but he gets famous recording the Beatles' "Hey Jude" with Wilson Pickett. Duane gets a chance to start his own band, and the idea is really they're looking to start. The idea is they're going to make him a solo star. Stevie Ray Vaughan. I don't know why I said that because that's decades later. Jimi Hendrix is the model I'm thinking of. Jimi Hendrix had the power trio, the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Um, Duane, I'm burying. I'm actually not burying lead here. I'm crunching a whole lot of material to say when Duane gets a chance to form his own band after recording with Wilson Pickett in October, November of 1968. He gets a contract in January-ish of 69 and gets a chance to form his own band. And he realizes he doesn't want to be a solo artist just doing his thing, that he really values music in tandem with others. Now, any musician can tell you, and any musician will tell you, music is always greater than the sum of its parts, or should be. Like that's in general the gist of it. But you know, there are ways for a hotshot lead guitarist or any hotshot, any person with supreme amount of talent to rise above the band and become the central focus of that. Duane didn't dig that. Now, his brother didn't mind it at first. That's a little tiff that they have just about in this founding era when they get started. But Duane didn't like it, and he didn't like the idea of anybody kind of standing ahead of other people in a musical sense. And this holds true throughout his life. He talks about it a lot. His friends reminisce about more or less how much he would talk about it. He didn't like flash and dash. So he has a chance to form this band. And he had met this bass player, Barry Oakley, through his other travels earlier in the year, and they'd really hit it off as kindred spirits. Like, we should get a band together, get all the best players we can, and just do the greatest thing you ever imagined. We're going to do this together. But Barry is in another band already with this guy, Dickie Betts, who is also an incredible lead guitarist, also from Florida, where Duane is from. They're all living in Jacksonville at this point. Dickie and Duane had crossed paths earlier over the years throughout Florida. Not always a cordial exchange that they had. They were two gunslingers, and that's how they squared off against each other, I guess, a little bit. But I think it was more Duane to Dickie, at least in rereading the quotes. In the meantime, Duane is in Muscle Shoals, and he's recording at Fame Studios. He's recording on all kinds of hits. And J. Johnny Johnson, who is a rhythm and blues drummer who'd been playing with Percy Sledge and Joe Tex, a whole bunch of folk, including Otis Redding. J-Mo comes from Macon and sets up camp with Duane. And J-Mo says, I was there because I was there to make money. He said, my mentor told me, you want to make money, go play with the white boys. So Duane went, and he said, J-Mo went to Muscle Shoals. He said the second he played with Duane, he forgot all about that, and it was all about the music. And then Barry would come. So they began to create something new. Now, the thing about Duane up to the point when he formed the Allman Brothers Band, is the music that he created was very rote and was not very original. He was a seasoned cover band artist. He wrote some decent arrangements, nothing as good as Hey Jude until he wrote Hey Jude, from my opinion. But he was using other people's arrangements, playing them on stage, doing very well, thriving as a live musician, but he didn't have an original sound. And he needed these other people to create this original sound. So I've got three. I've actually got four, because I've got Dickie in this picture too. Eventually, Duane quits Muscle Shoals and drives with J-Mo down to Jacksonville, where they set up in the house where Barry and Dickie's band, The Second Coming, is living and playing. That's in Jacksonville. It's got a historical marker in front of it. As far as I know, the first historical marker in the state of Florida for the Allman Brothers Band. And there's a picture of it in the book, actually. The Gray House, they called it. They show up. Eventually, they start jamming with Butch Trucks, who's another drummer from Florida, from the scene, who they had crossed paths with several years earlier. And they have two drummers, two guitarists, a bass player. And as Duane said, like we knew the band was better than any of us as singers. And Greg Allman was still back in LA, Duane's brother. The final Allman brother is the other Allman brother, which is it's just kind of always interesting. He completes the puzzle. But the super, long story, a tiny bit longer. On March 23rd, 1969, they get together in this house in Jacksonville and have what they call the Jacksonville Jam, or a jam. And it is the original 5 Allman Brothers plus a guy named Reese Winans on keys. Reese ends up playing with, now he's playing with Joe Bonamassa, but he was playing with Stevie Ray Vaughan for a time as well. That day, they finally convinced Duane to call Greg. We really need you to get him home so we can finish this band. Greg shows up on March 26, 1969. They hand him the lyrics to a Muddy Waters song called Trouble No More that they had sped up. And I always call it Allmanified, added their Allman Brother magic. And really, if you want to say, like, to your question, Allison, like, what's the difference? Like, listen to, Muddy Waters, if you will, version of Trouble No More that they learned versus their version. And you'll hear, like, okay, all these people added this little element to the sound to make it bigger. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Each of those guys, I'll wrap this up real quick. Each of those guys had their own influences. Everything from J-Mo with jazz and rhythm and blues, all of them steeped in the blues. Butch Trucks loved classical and folk. Dickie Betts loved folk, and he loved country and string and bluegrass music. So they had this wide, and then they loved psychedelic music of the 60s. So they had this real wide repertoire, a melting pot that they put in and made this sound that was just different. And Allison, you could say, like, you could replace any one of those people and it would have been different. Yes, of course. That's, I'll get people on my Facebook that'll say, like, oh, it wasn't the same after Duane died. Well, duh. I mean, like, like, you take any member out of a team and it's different. That's just the way teams and humans work. So that there's a long answer to that question, but I think each of those players was unique, specific to how they contributed to the greater whole. And I could wax poetic and have for hours on these things.